with Al again. Al, let me ask you about early voting and counting it in the state of Pennsylvania. You get all this mail-in voting comes. They can't start counting it until Election Day, which gives the days and sometimes the weeks for these conspiracy theories to fester. Some might say they learned nothing from 2020. Why is it that way? And is there hope it might change, that we might know who actually won the night of the election?
I think Pennsylvania is a unique disadvantage for a lot of the misinformation about elections. Florida, as you may recall, years ago was an example of how not to run elections in America. Right now, Florida does it really well. Yeah. They can pre-process their mail-in ballot envelopes. So on election night, by around midnight, they're able to report those mail-in ballot results. In Pennsylvania, the law doesn't allow the boards of elections to begin processing mail-in ballots until 7 a.m. on election morning. So in 2020, when about half of our voters voted by mail in Philadelphia, that's 375,000 mail-in ballots that we couldn't begin processing until 7 a.m.
And why is that?
Morning.
The question is, why is that? Why not be like Florida?
The law as it originally was passed only allowed us to begin processing them. Pennsylvania, and it's a really frustrating situation because it's a big problem with a very simple solution, and that is to allow Pennsylvania to do what other states do, which is to process those ballots in advance. But Harrisburg has been unwilling to pass a reform package that gets that done.
So, Claire McCaskill, there's a very simple reason why this hasn't been happening. It's a very simple solution. In fact, before the 2020 election, a lot of election experts said, if you want to make sure conspiracy theories don't rise up about this election, count your votes, Pennsylvania, count your votes, Michigan, count your votes, Wisconsin, the way Florida does. By the way, not like Fidel Castro's Florida. Ron DeSantis is Florida. Jeb Bush is Florida, right? And so Rick Scott's Florida. And they refused to do it. And it was calculated. And you heard Steve Bannon and you heard others say, hey, the early votes that come in are going to be supporting us. Day of voters are counted first in those states, so we can say stop the voting. So this is all calculated. So I say again, the legislatures of Pennsylvania, Republican, the Republican legislature in Michigan, the Republican legislature in Wisconsin, they know exactly what they're doing, and they knew in 2020 that if they did it the way Florida did it and counted the early votes early, the election would have been called by 10 p.m. that night.
Yeah, I mean, these legislatures are slavish to Donald Trump. I mean, if you peel all this back at the middle of it, you have that guy sitting down at his golf club that's really motivating all of these people to try to leave these avenues of claiming false fraud open to anybody who loses. It is the most undemocratic, small d thing that could possibly happen in this country. And, you know, one thing, Joe, I've listened to you guys talk about the Ukraine and what's going to happen in the Senate. I think people need to realize that Donald Trump's power over the Republican Party has not gone away. In fact, in many ways, it's grown. And just think for a minute, you act like we're very confident that Mitch McConnell won't stop funding to Ukraine. J.D. Vance, Blake Masters, Bud, Oz, what do they all have in common? They are totally Trump-created people. They are Trump folks. They're coming into a Senate where they are going to be expected by Trump to vote against Mitch McConnell for leader. And they're going to be joining a bunch of other Trump senators who are not in any way loyal to Mitch McConnell. So if anybody thinks what's going to happen in the Senate or in any of these state legislatures is going to get better as long as Donald Trump is in control of the Republican Party, are fooling themselves.
And Claire, while we have you here, I know you know Nancy Pelosi well, and I wanted to get your thoughts on the environment around, the political environment around the attack on Paul Pelosi, your reaction to Republican leaders who say we shouldn't talk about this politically because it doesn't line up at all, who are pushing conspiracy theories, and who you think could actually quell this violent rhetoric, if you think that the violent rhetoric that came down from Donald Trump led to the attack on Paul Pelosi.
Well, Joe and I have talked about this before. The interesting thing about the aftermath of this heinous attack on Paul Pelosi is the way the Republican Party has disrespected not only a crime victim, but the police. The hypocrisy around the idea that somehow they support the police really needs to be exposed here. Think about what these police officers did. They responded to a 911 call. They went into a very difficult situation and had to physically tackle someone who was trying to kill someone. They took them into custody, they Mirandized them, and they got a full video confession of what this man had done. And the Republicans want to somehow turn that into something that it isn't. So what happened to the blue line? What happened to the Republicans? We saw what they did to Capitol police officers, acting as if that 140 of them being beaten and maimed was not a big deal. And now they're saying to police officers that responded to a 911 call, which we all hope we have in our lives if something like this happened, they are basically calling them liars. It's unbelievable to me.
The blue line is not convenient to them in these two instances, and therefore they go a different direction.
They really do. You know, Mike, it is, again, you look at the conspiracy theories that were being spread about this. And by the way, not by freaks on the internet, not by wackos from QAnon, but from the richest man in the world, the owner of Twitter,
Ted Cruz,
by powerful senators, powerful Republican members of Congress, and the chatter on the phone when I was calling around trying to get information. The misinformation that was being spread, the conspiracy theories that were being spread by mainstream figures, going, well, I think it was, I think there was this male prostitute, and they were both in their underwear, and he said it was his friend, and it went on and on. Again, I won't say shocking, I will say a new low. And the fact that Mitch McConnell's the only Republican to really come out strongly and condemn this in the strongest of terms, without going, yeah, but, like J.D. Vance did last night. Yeah, it's bad, but, those Canadians who overstay their work visas are the greatest risk to American safety. It's just nonsense.
Yeah, like the glass was broken from the inside, I heard.
Right.
Maybe not, but, we'll figure that out later. That's from the former guy who just injects that into the body politic, into the bloodstream. So if you look at this from the point of view, if you graduated from the Johns Hopkins Medical School and you were one of the premier pathologists in the world, you would ask yourself, what's the root of this virus, this infection that has so messed up the United States of America? Because it is an infection, and it is fed off of one person, I would submit, who is the premier spreader, the former guy, and he's made it an art form. And I think, this is just personally, I think we have spent in our industry, the media, too much time over the last 4 or 5 years muttering to ourselves, how did this happen? How did we arrive at this point? Instead of looking at it from the point of view of this question, why did it happen? Why were we so vulnerable to this? Why are we where we are now? What happened?
Well, and it started with Donald Trump in the spring of 2020 talking about rigged elections and mail-in ballots. And so here we are, Willie. You and I have talked about it time and again. Educated people, our friends, lawyers, people that work on Wall Street, believing these conspiracy theories. And here we have these conspiracy theories that have started already about Paul Pelosi, despite the fact, again, we know what happened. The police, we have the information.
He confessed.
We have the confession. He said it was going to be a political trial, and then he was going to savage her, said he was going to take Paul Pelosi out. There is no ambiguity here, but this is where Republicans, and again, it starts with Donald Trump. What's the cost of Donald Trump lying through his teeth? And going, well, some people say, or hey, I'm hearing this or that or the other. That will be seized upon not just among the QAnon crowd, but for some reason, from guys on Wall Street, you know, people with advanced degrees, lawyers, and they'll seize on these lies. And we'll be hearing about this for 20 years. Lies when they, again, they have the truth. They don't want the truth. They can't handle the truth because it actually reveals, it just reveals the violence that is part of Trumpism.
And even